Thanks for joining us. For CBN News Watch, I'm Wendy Griffith. We begin this half hour with the rare and dangerous weather that happened this weekend. Tornadoes across the South left a trail of destruction and killed at least 4 people. More than 35 twisters were reported across 6 states. Close to a dozen hit the Houston area alone, damaging more than 300 structures, putting several people in the hospital. In Mississippi, 3 trees fell onto Mike Carroll's home. One of them missed him by just 3 feet.
Somebody was taking care of me, all I'm saying. But yeah, we're fine.
God bless him. In Jackson County, Mississippi, several people had to be rescued from their homes because of flooding. Jimmy Carter, the nation's 39th president, is dead at age 100. The only Georgian to occupy the White House, Carter helped the nation recover from a government plagued by scandal. His term also suffered from a sick economy and serious foreign policy threats. Jennifer Wishon looks back on the president's life and legacy.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute.
When he took the oath of office in 1977, James Earl Carter Jr. brought a breath of fresh air to Washington. A Southern Baptist Sunday school teacher and peanut farmer, the Georgia governor came from nowhere in 1976 to defeat President Gerald Ford.
Good evening. President Nixon reportedly will announce his resignation tonight.
Almost overnight, scandal-weary Americans could put Watergate and the Nixon-Ford years behind them. At home, the Carter years saw the dawn of disco. And overseas, the promise of a vigorous new pope from Poland, John Paul II. With Carter, many evangelicals were thrilled one of their own made it to the White House. He spoke their language, and there was real hope he could turn the country around. Before the '76 election, he talked to CBN founder Pat Robertson.
My faith in Christ has grown with age and with responsibility.
As president, he faced a world full of danger. The Soviet communist menace lurked on every continent.
The number killed in Tehran since the beginning of the month is probably well over 100.
In Iran, more trouble. A revolution led by an obscure cleric, the Ayatollah Khomeini, turned the country upside down. Suddenly, an ally became an enemy. And in November 1979, Khomeini's followers took 52 Americans hostage. A failed rescue attempt ended in the deaths of 8 U.S. servicemen. Critics say Carter's Iran legacy continues to haunt us today.
Building, building, building. Skyscrapers.
While elected to control surging inflation at home, it grew even more during his term as interest rates soared and Americans lost jobs.
The erosion of our confidence in the future.
In the summer of '79, he made his famous malaise speech, in which he seemed to blame the country's problems on the American people.
It is a crisis of confidence. It is a crisis that strikes at the very heart and soul and spirit of our national will.
The terrible economy haunted the president's re-election campaign. He was challenged by Republican Ronald Reagan, who told Americans it was time to change leaders.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
But as a former president, he drew admiration for his work championing human rights and charitable causes like Habitat for Humanity.
The world found out about Habitat in 1984 when President Carter and Mrs. Carter rode a bus up from Plains, Georgia to New York City and spent a week sleeping in a church basement and rehabbing a tenement building on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And no one had ever seen a former president of the United States behaving this way.
Carter told Gordon Robertson it was his way of putting his faith into action.
I think it's important for us to actually do things to demonstrate our belief, as Jesus did his whole life. He didn't just preach. You know, his life was devoted to reaching out to the leper, who would be the AIDS victim nowadays, or to those who were in prison, or those who were poverty-stricken, or who had a different color skin, like the Samaritans, as you know, or who were sinners.
The 39th president was happily married to his wife Rosalind for 77 years. The former First Lady, a respected advocate for mental health and human rights, died at age 96 at home in Georgia alongside her husband. Carter was in hospice care when his wife died. Nearly 10 years prior, he defied odds, beating a grim cancer diagnosis. Melanoma had spread to his brain and liver, but just months later, after surgery, radiation, and immunotherapy treatments, he announced he was cancer-free.
So a lot of people prayed for me, and I appreciate that.
Throughout all the battles he faced in life, Carter leaned heavily on his faith.
I think I have been as blessed as any human being in the world.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Nice tribute. Thanks, Jennifer. Well, President Joe Biden announced President Carter's funeral is scheduled for January 9th at the National Cathedral. He's expected to lie in state in the Capitol Rotunda. Last night, President Biden offered words of praise for his longtime friend.
Today, America and the world, in my view, lost a remarkable leader. He was a statesman and humanitarian. And Jill and I lost a dear friend.
President-elect Trump honored former President Carter with these words on Truth Social. Quote, "He did everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans. For that, we all owe him a debt of gratitude." Evangelist Franklin Graham expressed appreciation for President Carter's attendance at the opening of the Billy Graham Library in Charlotte in 2007. Posting on Facebook, quote, "He and my father, Billy Graham, had a close relationship. I know that his family would appreciate your prayers." In the Middle East, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is recovering after successful surgery to have his prostate removed. The 75-year-old leader underwent the procedure after doctors detected an infection. Justice Minister Yair Levine served as acting prime minister while Netanyahu was under sedation. Doctors said the surgery went well and that there's no fear of cancer. Netanyahu is expected to remain in the hospital for several more days for observation. Coming up, 2 European towns determined to keep the memory of the Jews who once lived in them alive. We'll take you there for a first-hand look. Stay with us. You're watching CBN News Watch. About half of the 6 million Jews who died in the Holocaust lived in Poland. Jewish communities that had been there for centuries never recovered. Now, 2 cities are working to restore the memory of their Jewish history. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl reports.
Northeastern Poland's largest city is Białystok, with a population of 300,000. Jewish people first came here in the early 1600s.
Those days, there were no trade, no small business without Jewish community. So the owners of the little towns, they were inviting this kind of community because they needed them and they also paid taxes. So when they came here, they started to buy and sell things, and they also ran breweries and shops.
According to Anna Krusznitska, a history teacher and tour guide in Białystok, about 50,000 Jewish people lived here leading up to World War II.
So when Nazis came here, they knew that this is a very important Jewish city. At the very, very beginning, 27th of June, 1941.
Behind me is a memorial to the Great Synagogue in Białystok. In 1941, the Nazis marched in and burned it to the ground with 800 people inside. The same day, they killed 1,200 more on the streets.
And it was just the beginning. Then they gutted the whole Jewish community in the ghetto. They were using them as slaves. They were working, hardworking. It was the time that those people were starving there. But still, they had a hope to survive.
Despite an uprising 2 years later, Nazis took almost the entire community to Treblinka and murdered them there. After the war, about 300 Jews returned to Białystok and tried to live here.
What happened in Poland in 1968? Communists said that all the Jewish people should go to Israel. So the last 120 people, something like this, just left Białystok.
Today, about 20 Jews live in Białystok, with none having Jewish family roots in the city. There is a redemptive move, however. Anna says people in her town want to make sure the Jewish history is not forgotten.
We have a special tray. We are not anti-Semites. We really want to show that we remember, and the Jewish part of the history of Białystok is as important as other parts.
Nearly 200 miles away in Lublin, the Jewish community started at about the same time in the 16th century.
When Jewish people came here, mostly as refugees from Western and Eastern Europe, they settled surrounding around the castle, King's Castle of Lublin, and, well, they lived there peacefully for hundreds of years.
Historian and tour guide Zemavit Karlovich tells CBN News many prominent rabbis came from this vibrantly rich society.
The Jewish community of Lublin, just before the Second World War, was like 43,000, 1/3 of the population of our town. And this, again, was very, let's say, diverse community. There were many political parties, there were many views on the life and on the religion and on politics.
When the Germans arrived, though, they turned the Jewish district into a ghetto.
They surrounded it by barbed wire. And Jewish people that were trapped inside there, they were thinking that they can survive the war. Nothing bad can happen to them. Well, after war, it all finished. But this never came, this end of war, at least for them.
The building on my right was a Jewish orphanage and elderly home. When the Nazis exterminated the Lublin ghetto in 1942, they murdered the 200 children, the elderly, and the child caregivers who refused to abandon the children.
The SS forces came and they started to throw away people from their houses, driving them to a square near the synagogue. And Jewish people were not resisting because, well, that never happened before. This was the very first ghetto in the world that was destroyed during Aktion Reinhardt, or the Holocaust, the German code name for them.
Almost all Lublin's Jews died in the Belgic concentration camp.
We know about 1,000 survived of them. But right now, Jewish community of Lublin is like 50, 70 people, and none of them is speaking Yiddish, the language that was so prominent in Jewish district before the war.
Now the Polish people in Lublin are telling many of those stories to the international community through the Grodzka Gate Theater cultural institution.
My grandfather once said that if you will let them...
News.com to find where to watch.
This week on Christian...
My job is to remember things and remember people. And you see, this is the history of our town. Lublin doesn't really exist without the memory of the Jewish people who are here. This is part of our history. We cannot forget it.
Growing up under communist rule, Karlovich says he didn't learn about the Jewish history until high school. Now he and others hope to change that, including the Jewish story as part of Lublin's history that's taught in elementary school. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Białystok and Lublin, Poland.
Fascinating. Thanks, Julie. Still ahead, the co-sponsor of the proposed bipartisan charitable act breaks down the impact of the bill. Stay with us. Members of Congress are working to encourage Americans to make more donations. The bipartisan charitable act could mean a larger deduction for taxpayers who give to places of worship and nonprofit groups. CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Michelle London spoke with the bill's co-sponsor, Oklahoma Senator James Lankford, on the impact of the legislation.
For Senator Lankford, getting this act passed through Congress soon is personal. He worked in nonprofits for close to 20 years, seeing firsthand just how much charities rely on our donations and time. Lankford admits, however, the spirit of giving has dwindled for many Americans in today's economy.
We want to create an environment where we tell people that the safety net of the world is not the federal government. It's the families first, our churches and nonprofits.
In order to get people to believe that message, Lankford's bill aims to give more to those who give back, especially to worship centers, charities, and other nonprofits of choice.
I'm very proud of how many Americans actually give to nonprofits, but we want people to actually be able to give a little bit more. Right now, the average American gives about 1.7% of their income to a nonprofit. 1.7%. That's not a lot.
And while he would like to see that number increase, Lankford knows certain changes must come first. The cap on federal charitable deductions for those who don't itemize would be raised to around $4,600 per individual, up from the previous cap of $300. Still, he stresses the importance of itemizing for maximum benefit.
Only that 9% of the country that actually itemize. We're trying to create an incentive for people that don't itemize on their taxes.
An American Bible Society study shows the number of Americans donating to charity has dropped almost 10% from last year. Its findings also reveal that American households with the lowest income levels actually give the most to a church or charity, with their donations exceeding 10% of their income.
Imagine for a moment if you're a lower middle class donor with that spirit of generosity, but if you don't have the financial wherewithal, and all of a sudden you have an incentive.
Sam Rodriguez is a senior pastor of New Season Church in California. He believes that if this bill becomes law, it would lighten the load for members in his congregation, eventually creating a sense of unity beyond the church doors.
If you have a tithing policy or a tithing and offerings policy, whatever it may be, it will definitely increase it, enabling churches to become even more transformative as it pertains to impacting the communities around them.
Langford believes a strong misconception about charitable giving is that larger donations matter most.
Nonprofits are very dependent on 1,000 small dollar donors, because those small dollar donors not only will give them $20 to be able to help, but they also become a volunteer base.
Teaming with Senate Democrat Chris Coons, Langford says hundreds of organizations, including the YMCA, Goodwill, and the American Heart Association, are all supporting the effort. Introduced last year, the Charitable Act received renewed support this month. It came in the form of a letter from the Charitable Giving Coalition, signed by 470 organizations from all 50 states, urging Congress to pass the bill. While Langford tells CBN News he doesn't expect a vote before the new year, he is pushing to get enough bipartisan support in the next Congress to get the act passed. Michelle London, CBN News, Washington.
Welcome back to CBN News Watch. The Lion King saga continues with Mufasa, who goes on a journey to find his destiny. Take a look.
This story begins far beyond the mountains and the shadows. On the other side of the light. Long before they became legends, Mufasa and the prince who would come to be known as Scar became brothers.
We do not associate with outsiders. Taka is the future king. We must protect the bloodline.
The Lion King is already a genre of music, rooted in African rhythms. And then, obviously, Lebo M's voice is synonymous with Lion King. That's the first voice you hear in the 1994 original. It's the first voice you hear in this film.
I read the script and I just saw so many different things that I'd done in my previous work. The relationship between the brothers, the family dynamics.
Find your place in the circle of life.
I was like, oh, I have to do this. What about you, my friend? What was your approach to writing the songs for Mufasa?
It's very rare when you read a script and go, a song goes here, a song goes here, a song goes here.
When I am king.
Most of the inspirations for the lyrics are there in that script.
I have a secret, Mufasa. I always wanted a brother. I always wanted a brother.
I always wanted a brother. That was the line that made me lean in.
I always wanted a brother. I always wanted a brother just like you.
We were thinking there might be a song there, and it was called, like, Brother Trouble.
Yes, it was called Brother Trouble.
And you were like, no, it's I always wanted a brother.
Yes.
This song is about him wanting a brother. I was like, oh, damn, that's great. What was the most difficult song to write?
Milele was a really tough song.
Really? I'm surprised to hear that.
Beyond the horizon.
Milele swells and soars. Sort of like soaring is difficult. That's the thing that Disney does so well, so it was daunting.
That's my favorite song in the film, by the way.
I'm so glad.
Which is crazy.
The legacy of Lion King is so intimidating. It's also like Elton John, Lebo M, Beyonce. That's a good hang. Like, I want to be in that hang.
Exactly.
How How can we help? Yes, I love it when we say things at the same time.
I'd rather do it on my own.
I need you two to try and act like adults, okay? Don't scare Kiara. And most of all, no stories.
Hello, I'm Tucker. What's your name? Mufasa.
Mufasa! We're alive! I did it! I saved us! You were saying?
Why don't we all go around and say a fun fact about ourselves? I once had a crush on a flamingo. I've never said that out loud.
There's no place to run. We have your scent.
My scent? I've been stalking you two all night.
When your father Simba was your age, he was afraid of the thunder.
Rain! Oh, finally, we have rain!
Race it to the light.
You're too fast.
There will be one Lion King.
Find your place in the circle of life.
I thought this was a comedy.
I think you could include an enthusiastic, rambunctious warthog a little bit more.
And a charismatic meerkat you can't help but fall in love with.
If I told my younger self that I was in a movie, I'd never believe myself. And
well, you are, girl. You are. Seeing Blue as Kiara and hearing her voice come out of that character. Oh. Give me a second, because I'm still I can't believe that's my baby.
it's just a really amazing experience, and I feel like everybody that's a part of this is so helpful and supportive. I feel like this is just a great experience for me, and I'm really happy for girls that look like me all around the world are able to watch this movie and hear and see themselves in it.
I'm so proud of you, and I can't believe how big and grown up you are. And I'm proud that she's gonna represent so many young brown girls around the world.
The earth will shake.
I have a secret, Mufasa. I always wanted a brother. I always wanted a brother.
Find your place in the circle of life.
The circle is broken.
Mufasa is in theaters now. Have a great day, everyone. God bless you. Thanks for watching.